Hi gang, it's Wayne MacPhail from Mondoville. This time out we're going to look at two new cameras from Pentax, the K-7 and the K-x. Now these share a lot of features. One thing they don't share is the price. This one's a lot cheaper than this one, and I'll go over them in detail in a minute, but I just wanted to talk about Pentax in general first. A lot of people looking for DSLRs consider Nikon and Canon and stop there, especially if they're looking for entry-level DSLRs like the D5000 or the Rebel series from Canon. And that's a shame because especially with these two cameras and even with the Pentax 20D, Pentax is producing some really interesting, really solid cameras, really weather-worthy cameras and really rugged cameras that have great lenses. And it's a shame that Pentax has been overlooked because they're really, really worth considering, especially, as I said, with these cameras, which I'll go into in detail in a minute. One of the things I wanted to mention in general, though, is that generally these are really good bargains. One, because of the Pentax underdog status, so you're not paying for the Nikon and Canon brand, but also because in both of these cases the shake reduction is intra-body, which means that you don't need to have an expensive lens with the vibration reduction in the lens itself. And that means that you can get really good lenses at less than you would pay for a Nikon or a Canon lens. Also, you can get retrofit lenses, so you can go back to even the earliest days of Pentax lenses and pick them up used really inexpensively. For example, a 50mm Pentax lens you can pick up for like 50-60 bucks used now and slap it on the camera. You're still going to have to do manual focus, of course, but that's a small price to pay for having a really, really excellent Pentax lens on this camera. So let's dive into both the K-7 and the K-x, talk about what's good about them and what's similar and different between the two of the cameras. Okay, so let's begin with the Pentax K-7. This is a really solid camera. It has a magnesium alloy body, and just hefting it you can really feel that it's a solid pro build. It's got dozens of seals that protect it from dust, from cold, from water, so you can really take this outdoors and not be too worried about it. You could probably even drive nails with it. It's very, very solid build. It feels really good in the hand. It feels like the Nikon D5000, which I reviewed earlier, and if you're familiar with that Nikon feel, you'd be very comfortable with the grip of this. Very balanced with the lens, feels really, really natural and comfortable. The controls at the top here are really nice. You can get your EV change here and your ISO shift, and that's done with this little scroll wheel on the back, very typical of a DSLR. Shutter's nice and easy, falls to the finger nicely, and the on and off switch just above it with a knurled switch here, which makes it very, very easy to use even in the dark. On the back, you see we've got a 3-inch display. It's really bright. It's 921,000 pixels on this screen, so very sharp, bright display. As I said, good contrast, good color saturation, and it really allows you to zoom in on your pictures nicely and see them in the field. It also serves obviously as your display area for additional information. On the back here too, typical array of buttons to control your flash and other features, your self-timer and other stuff back here. Nothing really startling here, white balance setting, all that kind of stuff. On the side here is your HDMI out port and DC in power, and also some additional AV out. Now this camera, given as HDMI, it's obvious that it shoots HD video and actually is shooting 1024 HD video, sort of really true HD video as opposed to 720p, which the K-x, which we'll look at next, shoots. As I said, the display on the back is really clear. You can see it looks really nice on the back here. The problem with the menuing system that's built into this is that it really has too much information. I think that there's just tons of data, tons of information that you can get about this camera, and in some ways sort of too much. For example, there's, let me show you the digital filtering here. For example, you can pick a variety of filters to shoot your images with, and I think that's pretty cheesy. I mean, it's nice for some people, I guess, but I think if you're really serious about shooting with a camera like this, you're going to want to shoot raw and do all your processing in the computer, not in the camera. Now, that said, this computer does shoot raw, or this camera does shoot raw. It shoots both the sort of almost industry standard, or what's hoping to be an industry standard DNG format, and also the Pentax specific PEF format, and you probably want to use DNG simply because you're going to have more accessibility with computer programs like iPhoto, for example, which doesn't particularly like the PEF format. Okay, so now let's take a look at the K7's little brother. This is the K-x. The first thing you'll notice when you pick this up and hold it is it's much lighter than the K7. It's not nearly as robust a build. This is more of a plastic build as opposed to the magnesium alloy steel body on the K7. That means it's a lighter camera. The kit lens that comes with it is also lighter, so the balance is still okay. But overall, you've got a lighter camera in hand. That means it's less easy to hold it steady in longer exposures, and it just feels less pro. And it doesn't have the same sealing that the K7 has, so you don't want to be taking this out in the rain, and certainly don't want to be driving nails with it. But that said, it's got a lot of the same features. As I said, one of the things you'll notice that's different is on the back here, this is a 2.5 or 2.7 inch screen, and it's only got about a third of the resolution, or 230,000 pixels on the back here. Now, the color saturation, the brightness, the sharpness of this is good, but not nearly as good as on the K7, especially the sharpness. The brightness is about the same, actually. You'll see the layout is a little different on the pattern of the buttons here, and certainly on the top here you have your scene modes, which is very sort of reminiscent of a kind of point and shoot camera. This camera also shoots high definition video, mono input for the audio, but it's only 720p video. Now, for most people, most of the time, especially if you're just putting stuff online, that makes absolutely no difference. You're not going to see any difference. Now, this shoots 24 frames per second video as opposed to 30 frames per second on the K7. The advantage of that online actually is because 30 frames per second is a even multiple down to 15 frames a second, you're actually going to get better compression off of video that's shot at 30 frames per second as opposed to 24 frames per second, because it's got to be sort of some, not interlacing, but sort of compression around the fact that there's an uneven number of frames on the 24 frames per second. That said, 24 frames per second gives you a more filmic look, so if that's what you're looking for, that's great. And in reality, uploading to high definition on YouTube with 24 frames per second looks pretty good as well. So it's not something to really sweat. This has the same filters that are built into the K7 and the same high dynamic range abilities as the K7, and it works extremely well. Shooting with this camera is very nice. It works it's very responsive. It has live view on the back, just the same as the K7 does, so that you're actually seeing what the camera sees when you shoot. Again, like much live view on a lot of DSLRs, the autofocus goes sort of brain dead a bit. It's a little sluggish, a little slow. Not my favorite tool. It's good because you can have a histogram and a grid built in, so you can see what the camera sees and level out your images and take a look at the histogram after the fact, which is very handy with a camera like this and with the K7. But again, most of the time you're probably not wanting to shoot with live view. What do I think of the K7 and K-x in general? I think these are really solid cameras. I really like the K7, particularly in terms of the solidity of the build, in terms of the features that this camera comes with, both the K7 and K-x in terms of software. Great range of features, great range of capabilities, and both of them I think are real value cameras, particularly because the lenses can be inexpensive and you can retrofit older lenses. Now the K-x I think is the real sweet spot. If you're looking for an entry-level DSLR, this is a great deal right now. I've seen it as inexpensively as $649 for the body and the kit lens. This kit lens is a 18 to 55, and it works very, very nicely. You're obviously going to want other lenses, but you can always look at getting used lenses if you're interested. So really, for under $1,000 with a couple of inexpensive used lenses, you'd get an excellent DSLR camera. And even if you just bought the kit lens, you're spending now what you would have spent a year ago or 2 years ago on just a little bit more actually than you would spend on, say, a Canon G9, which is nowhere near as capable as this camera. So it's a remarkable bargain, I think, and certainly better than the entry-level Nikon and Rebel in the same sort of price bracket. So that's a quick look at the Pentax K-7 and the Pentax K-x. For Mondoville, I'm Wayne MacPhail. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.